Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Raymond nervously fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. His mother sat across from him, her brow furrowed with concern. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner seemed to echo through the room, each second stretching into eternity. "Mom!" Raymond began, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's something I need to tell you." She leaned forward, her eyes searching his face. "What is it, honey?" "You know you can tell me anything." Raymond took a deep breath, his heart pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. I've been keeping something inside for a long time, since I was a kid, actually." His mother reached out and took his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Go on, Raymond. I'm listening." He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his courage. When he opened them again, they were brimming with unshed tears. "I've always felt different, like I wasn't comfortable in my own skin." His mother's grip on his hand tightened slightly, but she remained silent, allowing him to continue. "When I was little, I used to dream about being a girl, not just playing dress-up or anything like that, but actually being one. And those feelings, they never went away." Raymond's voice cracked, and he paused, swallowing hard. His mother's expression was unreadable, and for a moment he feared he'd made a terrible mistake. I want to dress like a girl, to express myself the way I feel inside. I know it's not what you expected, and I'm so sorry if I'm disappointing you." The silence that followed felt suffocating. Raymond's mother sat back, her hand slipping from his. He braced himself for the worst: anger, disgust, rejection. But when she spoke, her voice was soft and filled with emotion. "Oh, Raymond, I had no idea you've been carrying this burden for so long." He looked up, surprised by the gentleness in her tone. "You're not angry?" She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "No, honey, I'm not angry. I'm sad that you felt you couldn't come to me sooner. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like you couldn't be yourself around me." Raymond felt a wave of relief wash over him, so powerful it made him dizzy. "I was so scared," he admitted. "I thought you might hate me." His mother moved to sit beside him on the couch, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "I could never hate you, Raymond. You're my child, and I love you no matter what. I'm sorry if I ever gave you reason to doubt that." He leaned into her embrace, allowing himself to cry freely for the first time in years. "I've wanted to tell you for so long, but I didn't know how." She stroked his hair gently, just as she had when he was a little boy. "I'm glad you found the courage to tell me now. We'll figure this out together, okay?" Raymond nodded, unable to speak through his tears. They sat like that for a long time, the weight of his secret finally lifted. When he had calmed down enough to talk again, Raymond pulled back slightly to look at his mother. "What happens now?" She smiled, wiping away a tear from his cheek. "Well, that depends on what you want. Do you have a name you'd prefer to use? Pronouns?" Raymond blinked, surprised by her question. I haven't really thought that far ahead. I've been so focused on just telling you." His mother nodded understandingly. "That's okay. There's no rush. We can take this one step at a time. I think I'd like to try dressing differently first," Raymond said hesitantly. "See how it feels?" "We can do that," his mother agreed. "Would you like me to help you shop for some clothes?" Raymond felt a surge of warmth in his chest. "You'd do that?" "Of course, honey. I want you to be happy and comfortable with who you are." For the first time in years, Raymond felt a genuine smile spread across his face. "Thanks, Mom. That means everything to me." She hugged him tightly. "I love you, and I'm proud of you for being honest with me. It couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," Raymond admitted. "But I'm glad I did it." As they sat together on the couch, Raymond felt as though an enormous weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The future was still uncertain, but knowing he had his mother's support made it seem less daunting. The next few days passed in a blur of emotion and anticipation. Raymond and his mother spent hours talking, delving into feelings and memories he had kept buried for so long. She listened without judgment, asking questions to better understand his experiences. On a sunny Saturday morning, they set out for the mall. Raymond's stomach was a knot of nerves as they walked through the sliding doors. "Where should we start?" his mother asked, glancing around at the various storefronts. Raymond hesitated. "Maybe a department store? They might have a wider selection." They made their way to one of the larger stores, heading for the women's section. Raymond felt his cheeks burning as they browsed through racks of blouses and skirts. "See anything you like?" his mother asked gently. He reached out tentatively, running his fingers over a soft, powder blue sweater. "This is nice," he murmured. "Why don't you try it on?" she suggested. "We can get a few different things and see what you feel comfortable in." With his mother's encouragement, Raymond selected a small pile of clothes, the blue sweater, a pair of black leggings, a floral print dress, and a denim skirt. His hands shook slightly as he took them into the fitting room. Alone in the small cubicle, Raymond took a deep breath before changing into the sweater and leggings. He turned to face the mirror, his heart pounding. The person staring back at him looked different, softer somehow. The sweater draped gently over his frame, and the leggings hugged his legs in a way that felt both foreign and right. A knock on the door startled him. "How's it going in there?" his mother called. I think I like it," Raymond replied, his voice wavering slightly. "Can I see?" After a moment's hesitation, Raymond opened the door. His mother's eyes widened, and for a split second he feared he'd made a mistake. But then she smiled, her eyes misty. "Oh, honey, you look wonderful." Raymond felt a lump form in his throat. "Really?" She nodded emphatically. "Really? How do you feel?" He looked down at himself, smoothing the sweater with trembling hands. "I feel like me. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm seeing the real me." His mother pulled him into a tight hug, not caring who might see. "I'm so happy for you," she whispered. They left the store with several bags of clothes, including the blue sweater and leggings. As they walked through the mall, Raymond felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. He knew this was just the beginning of a long journey, but having his mother by his side made it feel less daunting. At home, Raymond spent hours in front of the mirror, trying on different combinations of his new clothes. Each outfit felt like a step closer to the person he'd always known he was inside. That evening, as they sat in the living room, his mother broached a subject they hadn't yet discussed. "Have you thought about telling your father?" Raymond's stomach clenched. I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet." She nodded understandingly. "That's okay. There's no rush. But we'll have to talk to him eventually, right?" "I know," Raymond sighed. "I'm just worried about how he'll react." His mother took his hand. "Your father loves you, Raymond. It might take him some time to adjust, but I believe he'll come around." Raymond nodded, hoping she was right. The thought of facing his father filled him with dread, but he knew it was a conversation he couldn't avoid forever. As the days passed, Raymond grew more comfortable in his new clothes. He started wearing them around the house, relishing the feeling of finally being true to himself. His mother was endlessly supportive, offering advice on makeup and helping him style his growing hair. One evening, as they sat at the kitchen table after dinner, Raymond broached a subject he'd been mulling over. "Mom, I've been thinking about my name." She looked up from her cup of tea, giving him her full attention. "Oh?" Raymond nodded, his fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. "I think I'd like to go by Rachel." His mother smiled warmly. "Rachel, it's a beautiful name. Is there any particular reason you chose it?" "It was the name of the main character in my favorite book as a kid," Rachel explained. "I always felt a connection to her." "Well, Rachel," her mother said, emphasizing the name, "I think it suits you perfectly." Hearing her mother use her chosen name brought tears to Rachel's eyes. It felt right in a way she couldn't fully articulate. The next big hurdle came a few weeks later when Rachel decided it was time to tell her father. Her mother had prepared him somewhat, letting him know that their child had something important to discuss. Rachel's father sat in his armchair, his expression a mix of concern and confusion as Rachel, dressed in her favorite blue sweater and black skirt, stood before him. "Dad," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to tell you something important about who I am." Her father leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What is it, son?" Rachel took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I'm transgender, Dad. I've always felt like a girl inside, and I've decided to start living as my true self. I go by Rachel now." The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel's father sat back in his chair, his face unreadable. Rachel felt her heart pounding in her chest, fear and hope warring within her. Finally, her father spoke, his voice gruff with emotion. I don't understand all of this, Rachel, but I want you to know that I love you, no matter what." Rachel felt tears spilling down her cheeks as her father stood and pulled her into a tight embrace. It wasn't perfect understanding, but it was acceptance, and that meant everything. The journey ahead would be challenging. There would be difficult conversations with extended family, decisions about medical options, and the daunting prospect of coming out to friends and colleagues. But as Rachel stood in her father's arms, with her mother looking on with tears in her eyes, she knew that she had the love and support she needed to face whatever lay ahead. That night, as Rachel lay in bed, she reflected on how much her life had changed in just a few short weeks. The fear and shame that had plagued her for so long were fading, replaced by a growing sense of confidence and self-acceptance. She thought about the little girl she used to dream of being, the one who had been locked away inside for so many years. That little girl was free now, finally able to exist in the world. Rachel closed her eyes, a smile playing on her lips. For the first time in her life, she was excited about the future. It wouldn't be easy, but with her family's support, she knew she could face anything. As she drifted off to sleep, Rachel felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was Rachel now, truly and completely, and that was something to celebrate. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of changes and new experiences for Rachel. With her parents' support, she began the process of transitioning socially. It started small, with trips to local cafes and shops where she could present as herself without the fear of running into someone she knew. Her mother helped her practice makeup techniques, and together they experimented with different hairstyles that framed Rachel's face in a more feminine way. Each small change felt like a victory, a step closer to aligning her outer appearance with her inner self. Rachel's father, true to his word, made an effort to understand and support her. He stumbled over pronouns sometimes, accidentally using he or Rachel's old name, but he always corrected himself quickly. His determination to get it right meant more to Rachel than she could express. One sunny afternoon, Rachel sat at the kitchen table with her parents, a stack of papers in front of her. "I've been researching gender therapists in the area," she explained, pushing a list towards them. "I think it would be helpful to talk to someone who specializes in this." Her mother nodded encouragingly. "That's a great idea, honey. Do you have anyone in particular in mind?" Rachel pointed to a name on the list. "Dr. Martinez has excellent reviews, and her office isn't too far from here. I thought maybe we could all go together for the first appointment." Her father, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "Of course we'll go with you, Rachel. We're in this together." The warmth of her parents' support washed over Rachel, bringing tears to her eyes. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." As Rachel continued her journey of self-discovery, she found herself facing new challenges. The question of whether to pursue medical transition loomed large in her mind. She spent hours researching hormone therapy and its effects, weighing the potential benefits against the risks. During one of her therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez, Rachel broached the subject. "I've been thinking about starting hormones," she admitted, twisting her hands in her lap. But I'm scared. What if I change my mind? Dr. Martinez leaned forward, her expression compassionate. It's normal to have fears and doubts, Rachel. Transitioning is a big step. But remember, this isn't a race. You can take as much time as you need to make these decisions. Rachel nodded, feeling some of the tension leave her body. I guess I'm just worried about disappointing everyone if I'm not sure. Your journey is your own, Dr. Martinez reminded her gently. The only person you need to be sure for is yourself. Your family and friends who truly love you will support you no matter what. Those words stayed with Rachel long after the session ended. She realized that in her eagerness to embrace her true identity, she had been putting pressure on herself to have everything figured out immediately. But transition, like any major life change, was a process. It was okay to take things one step at a time. As spring turned to summer, Rachel found herself facing a new challenge, coming out to her friends. She had been avoiding social media and declining invitations, unsure of how to explain her transition. But she knew she couldn't hide forever. With her parents' encouragement, Rachel decided to host a small gathering at their house. She invited her closest friends, people she had known since high school. The day of the party, Rachel stood in front of her mirror, smoothing down her favorite sundress. Her hair, now past her shoulders, was styled in soft waves. She applied a light touch of makeup, wanting to look natural, but polished. As the doorbell rang, Rachel felt her heart race. Her mother squeezed her hand reassuringly before going to answer the door. One by one, Rachel's friends arrived. There were moments of confusion as they were introduced to Rachel, followed by wide eyes and tentative smiles as understanding dawned. Rachel's best friend, Emma, was the first to step forward and pull her into a tight hug. "You look beautiful," she whispered. "I'm so happy for you." The party wasn't without its awkward moments. There were slip-ups with names and pronouns, quickly followed by apologies. Some friends had questions, which Rachel answered as best she could. But overall, the atmosphere was one of love and acceptance. As the evening wound down, Rachel found herself sitting on the porch swing with Emma. The setting sun cast a warm glow over the yard, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers. "How are you feeling?" Emma asked, bumping Rachel's shoulder gently with her own. Rachel smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. "Relieved," she admitted. "And grateful. I was so scared of losing everyone." Emma shook her head. "We love you, Rachel. Who you are hasn't changed. You're just finally able to be your true self. And we're all here to support you." Tears pricked at Rachel's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means everything to me." As the summer progressed, Rachel continued to grow more comfortable in her skin. She started venturing out more, no longer afraid of being seen. There were still challenging moments, strange looks from strangers, the occasional rude comment, but Rachel found strength in the support of her family and friends. One particularly memorable day came when Rachel decided to go swimming for the first time since beginning her transition. She had avoided the beach and pool all summer, self-conscious about her body. But as a heat wave gripped the city, the call of the cool water became too strong to resist. Rachel stood at the edge of the community pool, wrapped in a towel. She wore a modest one-piece swimsuit underneath, carefully chosen to flatter her figure while providing coverage. Her mother stood beside her, offering silent support. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready," her mother said softly. Rachel took a deep breath, steeling her nerves. "No, I want to. I can't keep hiding." With trembling hands, she unwrapped the towel and hung it on a nearby chair. She felt exposed, vulnerable, but as she looked around, she realized that no one was paying her any particular attention. People were focused on their own activities, swimming, sunbathing, playing with their children. Emboldened, Rachel walked to the pool's edge and slipped into the water. The cool liquid enveloped her, washing away her fears. She ducked under the surface, feeling a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in years. When she emerged, pushing her wet hair back from her face, she saw her mother beaming at her from the pool's edge. Rachel grinned back, feeling a surge of joy and accomplishment. That evening, as Rachel sat on her bed brushing out her damp hair, she reflected on how far she'd come. The scared, conflicted person who had struggled to tell her mother the truth seemed like a distant memory. In her place was a young woman growing more confident and self-assured every day. There were still challenges ahead. Rachel knew she would face discrimination and misunderstanding as she moved through the world. The question of medical transitions still weighed on her mind, but for the first time in her life, she felt equipped to face these challenges head-on. As she set down her brush and turned off the light, Rachel whispered a quiet thank you to the universe for her supportive family, for friends who stood by her, and for the strength she had found within herself to live authentically. Rachel drifted off to sleep, dreaming of the future, a future full of possibilities where she could be unapologetically herself. The journey ahead might be long and sometimes difficult, but she was ready to embrace it with open arms. In the soft light of dawn, Rachel woke with a sense of purpose. Today was the day she had been both anticipating and dreading, her first day back at college since beginning her transition. She had taken a semester off to focus on her mental health and begin her journey, but now it was time to face the world as her true self. As she stood in front of her closet, Rachel's hand hovered over her clothes. She wanted to look put together and confident, but not draw too much attention to herself. Finally, she settled on a pair of dark jeans, a soft green sweater, and ankle boots. She applied her makeup with care, aiming for a natural look that enhanced her features without being too dramatic. Downstairs, her parents were waiting with breakfast and words of encouragement. Her father, who had come so far in his understanding, gave her a tight hug before she left. "You've got this, Rachel," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "We're so proud of you." The drive to campus felt both longer and shorter than Rachel remembered. As she parked her car and gathered her things, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever the day might bring. The first person she encountered was her academic advisor, Dr. Patel. Rachel had emailed her over the summer, explaining her situation and requesting that her name be updated in the school's system. Dr. Patel greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome back, Rachel. It's wonderful to see you." That simple acknowledgement nearly brought tears to Rachel's eyes. She blinked them back, smiling gratefully. "Thank you, Dr. Patel. It's good to be back." As she made her way across campus, Rachel felt the weight of curious glances. She held her head high, reminding herself that she had every right to be there, to exist as herself. Some faces were familiar, classmates from previous semesters who did double takes as they recognized her. A few offered hesitant smiles or waves, which Rachel returned. In her first class of the day, Rachel's heart pounded as the professor called roll. When he reached her name, her real name, and she raised her hand to say "here," she felt a sense of rightness wash over her. This was who she was meant to be. During a break between classes, Rachel ran into Thomas, a guy she had been friendly with in previous semesters. He looked confused for a moment before recognition dawned in his eyes. "Hey, Rachel, right?" he said, his tone uncertain but not unkind. Rachel nodded, bracing herself for his reaction, but Thomas just smiled. "Cool. How was your summer?" The normalcy of the question, the easy acceptance, made Rachel's chest tight with emotion. "It was transformative," she said with a small laugh. "How about yours?" As they chatted, Rachel felt some of her tension ease. Not everyone would be as accepting as Thomas, she knew, but this interaction gave her hope. The day wasn't without its challenges. There were awkward moments in the restroom, sidelong glances in the cafeteria, and one professor who stumbled over her name and pronouns. But for every difficult moment, there was a positive one to balance it out. A classmate who complimented her sweater, a group project where her teammates seamlessly integrated her, a TA who made a point of using her correct name. By the time her last class ended, Rachel felt drained but oddly exhilarated. She had done it. She had faced her fears and come out the other side stronger. As she walked back to her car, Rachel's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How did it go, sweetie?" Rachel smiled, typing out a reply. "It was tough but good. I'm proud of myself." Her mother's response came quickly. "We're proud of you too. So proud." Driving home, Rachel felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her. This was just the beginning, she knew. There would be more challenges ahead: job interviews, dating, navigating the world as a transgender woman. But she felt ready to face them. That evening, as she sat with her parents recounting the events of the day, Rachel realized something profound. The dream she had held onto since childhood, the dream of being seen and accepted as the girl she knew herself to be, was no longer just a dream. It was her reality. There would still be difficult days ahead. The journey of self-discovery and acceptance was ongoing. But as Rachel looked at her parents, who had come so far in their own understanding, she felt a surge of hope for the future. "I think," she said slowly, "I'm ready to start looking into hormone therapy. If you'll support me." Her parents exchanged a glance before her father reached out to squeeze her hand. "Whatever you need, Rachel. We're here for you every step of the way." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.